Hello there, and welcome back to another Doctor Who related video. In today's Doctor Who related video, I'll be taking a look at this, Vakita Time, Season 16 of Doctor Who. I've recently rewatched all of Season 16 of Doctor Who, Vakita Time stuff, and it's sort of inspired me to do a little video, do a little quick fire review on the 6 stories, what feature within this, which are of course the Ribos Operation, the Pirate Planet, the Stones of Blood, the Androids of Tara, the Power of Kroll, and the Armageddon Factor. And I feel like Season 16 doesn't really get talked about much within the 4th Doctor. It's often sort of a forgotten era of the 4th Doctor when we sort of talk about it. And often people think that it's one of the weakest of the 4th Doctor era. For me, it's not really the weakest. Far from it. It's definitely not the weakest of the 4th Doctor era. I may do in the future a video sort of rating the 4th Doctor eras, you know, what's my least favourite 4th Doctor season to my favourite. That could be a future video within itself. So I thought I'd spend some love on Season 16 because not many people really talk about it, and I feel like Season 16 needs a bit more love out there on YouTube. So I thought I'd give Season 16 the love it deserves because, by gum, I feel like this season has a lot of ambition. The world building within this season is superb, from the world building of Tara to the wonderful Ribos Operation. The world building within that, you know, Power of Kroll is just fantastic. The world building within this season and the ambition and the scale of the stories within this, you really got to commend it because this really does live up to the sort of the motto of a show that could. It doesn't have the budget to fulfill these ideas, but by God, it tries to deliver these ideas. So yeah, I feel like this season has a lot of ambition, the scale, the whole sort of brave nature of this season to basically commit a season to whole season arc. You know, it's very unusual for classic Doctor Who to do a sort of a season arc, you know, with collecting the segments of Vakita Time. Arguably, I think this is the second time classic Doctor Who did a season arc, but this is probably the most notable one. The first being Nerva Beacon with Season 12, with it sort of revolving around Nerva. But this is the first time when Doctor Who actually does a full sort of season arc going, right, we're going to do a season dedicated to this. So before we dive into the stories, I think we need to talk about the TARDIS team, because I love this TARDIS team. The 4th Doctor, Tom Baker, this is his 4th season in the role. And yeah, you can definitely see the things are starting to creep in, that Tom's starting to add a few more jokes and a few more silly stuff, because obviously Graham Williams doesn't have the control over Tom what Philip Hinchcliffe has, because you get more of the wackier 4th Doctor in this season. And I think that pays well for this season, actually. I feel like it works. I feel like if you go into this season thinking it's going to be silly and a bit daft and a lot of fun, then you're going to have a lot of fun, because I really did enjoy Tom within this season. We have K9, this is his 2nd season. And I have to say, this season really does utilise K9 incredibly well. You can see sort of K9 sort of being the get out of jail card really within this season. You know, like the Androids of Tara, he's used quite prominently in the Armageddon Factor. K9 gets to do some interesting stuff. But the main addition within this season is Romana 1, played by Mary Tam, and I utterly adore Mary Tam. I think she's my favourite Romana. She's a lot more feisty, and she's a person who keeps the Doctor in line. I feel like that's the important thing, the difference between Romana 1 and Romana 2, but Romana 1 is very much sort of like, oh, here he goes, he's off on one again, reminding him, look, we need to get the segments of the key to time. You know, she's very direct and, you know, has no nonsense, and I love that, especially for a more sillier 4th Doctor. To have that complete contrast in character is wonderful, and by the time you get to sort of the Armageddon Factor, you can see Mary Tam or Romana sort of picking up on sort of the Tom Bakerisms, you know, with like, oh well, and all that sort of stuff. The way Tom would deliver a line, you can see that sort of starting to creep into how Mary Tam delivers certain lines, which is a wonderful little thing. And I love this TARDIS team. I feel like it's an underrated TARDIS team, and it is superb. I love them. And it's such a shame, but we've only got the key to time and 1 season of Big Finish and a couple of companion chronicles, because Mary Tam is utterly superb. The chemistry between Tom Baker and Mary Tam is just lovely. It is just, that's the reason why you tune in, because it is just lovely to see how that dynamic changes. Dive into the stories themselves. So the first story in Season 16 of Doctor Who is the Ribos Operation by Robert Holmes. Now this has a sort of traditional sort of Robert Holmes feel in the centre, but it has a double act with the sort of 2 convent characters of Gavrock, and then of course you have the double act between the Graf and his guard, which is quite interesting within it, because the thing with Robert Holmes' story is there's normally a double act within it. And this is definitely one of his weaker scripts. You know, it's definitely not going to be the likes of, you know, the Talons of Wen Chang, Spared from Space, Terror of the Autons. But it's still a solid little story. The start of the story with the 4th Doctor sort of being sort of summoned by the White Guardian is very interesting and looks like the Colonel from KFC. But it's just a wonderful little start. The introduction between Tom and Romana is such an interesting way of sort of exploring the Doctor's sort of academic side on Gallifrey. Is quite cool. Ribos as a planet I think is incredibly rich because we get some great world building of this sort of wintry planet, but there are only 2 seasons, summertime and wintertime, but the winters last so many years within the planet that there's sort of a cycle within it called the ice time, which is wonderfully rich. And then of course we have the whole ceremonial sort of theme within that, with the culture of them sort of guarding the crown jewels, with them sort of, you know, putting out the lights. It's all very delicate and intricate with that sort of thing within it, with the Shrivenzal guarding that. We have Garen's plan with him putting the sort of Jeffrick within the crown jewels, so he fools the Graph to buy the planet, or as the locals call it all well in Garen's little plan, Scrinstone, which I think is a wonderful little funny touch. We have the wonderful character of Binro, who's very much sort of the Pigbin Josh of, I guess, the Fourth Doctor era. I think Binro's a wonderful character. Garen and the Fourth Doctor have a very interesting dynamic within the sort of second half within the story. And I'm going to give Ribos Operation a well-deserved 7.5 out of 10. I think that it's an enjoyable story. Not the best within the season, but definitely a solid start within this season. So the second story within the Key to Time is The Pirate Planet by Douglas Adams. Yes, we see the Fourth Doctor and Romana off to Califrax, but Califrax isn't there as they arrive on the planet Zanuck, where we get the nice little bit of continuity with the Fourth Doctor sort of banging his head on the console, where we get the sort of mark where he got bit by a dog. So that's the continuity reason why Tom's got a little bit of a worse for wear within this. But yeah, I absolutely love the Pirate Planet. I love the whole idea of the sort of pirate, the captain sort of piloting a planet and sort of, you know, extracting the minerals, and that, you know, rare minerals are just, you know, nothing, they're just stones, whereas to other people they're highly valuable things. And I think that there's such a great wonderful sort of culture built within this. The idea of the Mentiads is fantastic, but one thing I've really got to note about this story is the location footage. So the location footage looks absolutely stunning, and when this gets released on the Blu-ray collection, this is going to look really stunning because the amount of location work within this is beautiful, and I feel like it makes the story really stand out. You know, Tom Baker, you know, this is Fourth Doctor peak comedy with him sort of throwing a bag of jelly babies like a grenade. Wonderful. The captain is brilliant, it's bombastic, you know, he's just a wonderful. The design work of the captain is wonderful, I really do love it. A9 fighting the robot parrot, utter delight, utter delight. It's really bonkers, but there's a really interesting sci-fi idea within this. I feel there's so many interesting ideas. The whole idea of a planet being the segment of the Key to Time of Califrax is such an interesting idea. Tom Baker, despite his silly moments, has some fantastic moments, especially when he confronts the captain about what he does. You know, like, oh, what's it for? It's wonderful. It is a wonderful moment. K9, again, some brilliant moments. Romana is sassy as ever. I just love it. It's a really good story. So for me, The Pirate Planet gets a well-deserved Mr. Fibbly 8 out of 10. So the halfway mark for scene 16 is The Stones of Blood by David Fisher. Now for many you could say that this could be their favourite because it has that sort of gothic horror undertones, much like the Philip Hinchcliffe era. Now there are a few remnants of gothic horrorness within the Fourth Doctor era, like Image of the Fendal, Horror Fang Rock, and The Stage of Decay. So we still get that sort of gothic horror style, what sort of kick-started the Fourth Doctor era. So what do I make of The Stones of Blood? Well, The Stones of Blood's quite an interesting one for me because it's been a story what I never really loved when I first watched it, because the second half normally lets it down when we go to sort of this sort of spaceship and we have that sort of whole sort of court scene, which sort of falls flat for me personally when I first watched it. But having rewatched it, I really do enjoy it. I love Doctor Who stories where they sort of involve folklore and mythology. I love that. The whole idea of the Carriac is wonderful. It's beautiful. Then the whole twist within a prison ship is really great stuff. And the supporting cast of Professor Rumford is wonderful. And, you know, it just makes me want to have a sausage sandwich. It's brilliant. It's wonderful. I love the sort of night shoots within this. The cliffhangers are a little bit bizarre with sort of Romana just tripping off a cliff. It's just a little bit weird. Really, I feel like that's a little bit of a weird thing. With the Ogre, I'm going to be honest, I really like the concept. I really do like the idea of the Ogre themselves. I think that's quite wonderful. And the whole Fourth Doctor defending himself is very interesting. The sort of, we see the Wirren prop within there. It's quite wonderful. A wonderful little funny moment, which I think is quite funny, is when the Fourth Doctor just opens the door and like a dead body falls out and just like quickly shoves it back in there. I just had a little chuckle at that. Romana gets some wonderful bits within it. K9 again, some great little bits sort of defending and fighting off the ogre. It's wonderful. I really do like this story. I think that it's great. I love it. I actually really like it. Arguably, I'd say the first 2 episodes are probably where it's at its strongest. But having rewatched it, I feel like part 4 is probably the weakest of the actual story itself. But I have to say that I really did enjoy revisiting the Stones of Blood. So I'm going to give the Stones of Blood an 8.5 out of 10. I really did enjoy it. So yeah, 8.5 sausage sandwiches out of 10 for the Stones of Blood. So the 4th story is The Android of Tara, again by David Fisher. So what do I make of this story? Well, I really enjoyed it actually. I have to say that it's a bit of a slow burner, but when the story actually gets going, I did enjoy it. I really did enjoy it. We have some wonderful moments of, the 4th Doctor just wanting to go fishing. And Romana's like, well, I'm going to get the segment then. You have your fun and I'm off to get the segment. And then, of course, we have the iconic Taran Woodbeast. We have the wonderful supporting cast of Grendel, a wonderful little villain within this story, trying to get his rights to the throne. Again, Mary Tam gets to do something a little bit different, playing one of the royal families within this story. But again, I think the world building for Tara is wonderful. The whole sort of medieval architecture with that whole sort of futuristic sort of technology. It's a wonderful sort of juxtaposition, but it works wonderfully, incredibly well. I really did enjoy that. The location works absolutely wonderful. The 4th Doctor and K9 just chilling on a boat. Wonderful little stuff. I really did enjoy that. But I have to say that the whole action piece within the story of the sort of 4th Doctor versus, Count Grendel in the sword fight, it just seems to last a bit too long. It just seems to go on and on and on. Like, yeah, I get it. There's a sword fight going on. Can we hurry up now? So I feel like that's sort of the negative for me, really. That the whole sort of the story has been building up to this moment, and it just seems a bit dragged out for me personally. But it's still a really good, enjoyable story. The prince is a very interesting thing. Just the whole sort of sliminess of Grendel is wonderful. I really do like the world building. Like I said, it's a really enjoyable story. Again, I'm going to give The Android of Tara an 8 out of 10. Fun story. The 5th story, it is The Power of Kroll. Kroll by Robert Holmes. Yes, this is probably the weakest of the season for me. Yeah, it's a weird one. It's a really weird one because I read the Target book before I actually saw the story. So yeah, I've got more vivid memories of the Target book than I actually have of the actual story. So yeah, this is an interesting one because season 15 we saw the smallest Doctor Who monster in the form of the Swarm, and then in season 16 they did the biggest Doctor Who monster up until that point, which was Kroll. Now I do like Kroll actually. It's a very interesting idea. The whole mythology and the Swampies is very interesting, but the whole stuff with the sort of mining refractory sort of things a little bit dull. We've got Philip Maddock there and John Leeson there, but I have to say that Philip Maddock doesn't seem to be that engaged within the story, and you're like, well, yeah, I can feel you, Philip. I'm not really engaging within the story. Yeah, and I feel like the thing with this story, it kind of diminishes Romana to sort of that sort of screaming companion, especially when she's about to be sacrificed to Kroll. But I will say the 4th Doctor has some very funky trousers. If I was to rate the story off Tom Baker's funky trousers, then that'll definitely get a solid 10. But as a story itself, I'm going to give it, I'm going to give it a 5. I think that it's okay. I think it's alright. It's nothing spectacular, but it definitely is, for me, the low point within season 16. Right, the series finale. This is what the season has been building up to. Will the 4th Doctor and Romana get the 6th segment to the Key to Time and complete the actual key itself with the Armageddon Factor by Bob Baker and Dave Martin? Now, I feel like they're very underrated writers, and I really do enjoy their stuff. And this is no exception. This is the last televised 6-parter in Doctor Who history. Obviously, if you count Sharda, then Sharda was the last 6-parter, but that wasn't televised. But yeah, this is very interesting as we spend time on Atrios, building the world, building that they're in sort of a nuclear war with a planet called Zeos, and the whole twist involving within that being run by a computer, and sort of the Shadow. Very interesting stuff. We have the Marshal, very interesting character, especially when he's sort of being possessed by the Shadow. And we have the introduction of Lalla Ward into Doctor Who playing Princess Astra, who has a very interesting twist. You probably know what the twist is, what she actually is. But yeah, good story for K9. I feel like this is K9's best outing because he obviously completes with the Zeos computer and, falls under the influence of the Shadow. We introduce Drax, this sort of Cockney Del Boy Time Lord, you know, which is very interesting. But yeah, the Shadow, I love the whole idea of a Shadow itself, being a minion of the Black Guardian. And I think that this story sort of raises questions of why wasn't the Black Guardian sort of more of a prominent feature within the other 5 stories. So it sort of builds to this, you know, story of the Armageddon Factor. So like, oh my god, the Black Guardian's been following the Doctor. I think for me that would have improved the season a little bit more and made it a little bit more tighter and get the whole threat of the Black Guardian, because we you know, we hear of, you know, beware of the Black Guardian in the Androids of Tara, but nothing really comes of it until the Armageddon Factor. So I feel like if they included the Black Guardian a little bit more within the season, I feel like it would have had a bit more of an impact within the Armageddon Factor when the Black Guardian does show up in the final episode of the Armageddon Factor. But yeah, it's an interesting 6-parter. It does have a little bit of padding, but I do actually really enjoy it. The whole time loop sequence is great. I do enjoy this story, actually. I really do love this story. You know, I feel like it's a bit of an underrated one. My one big negative for the Armageddon Factor is the actual ending. That after all this time of following the Doctor and Romana and K9 collect the segments of the Key to Time just for it to be dispersed again, kind of just makes you go, well, that was a bit pointless, wasn't it? So yeah, I feel like that's the negative for me with the Armageddon Factor. So I'm going to give the Armageddon Factor a 7 out of 10. So that concludes my review of Season 16 of Doctor Who. I hope you have enjoyed it, and hopefully this will inspire you to revisit it, because I feel like it is an underrated season. The TARDIS team's superb, and it's a season full of ambition, and I really do admire it. It's silly, it's wacky, and it's just enjoyable Doctor Who. What more could you want? It is really enjoyable, and the wonderful Mary Tam. Oh, wonderful stuff. So I really do enjoy the Key to Time. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time for more Doctor related content. So if you've enjoyed this video, then please do like and subscribe, because it really does help the channel out, and I'll see you next time for more Doctor Who related content.